with my smartphone, I can do anything, anywhere, anytime. Yes, you can. But the bad, you probably waste a lot of time reading the same kind of things that you read on the internet. So you're checking Facebook, and the little things that come down the side are the same kind of things that are going to suck you in. And I copied the last sentence, bolded it, colored it, because again, that really resonated with me. The second you take out your phone takes you out of your life. And this is not just personally. Of course, my husband and my kids complain about me having my phone. So it takes you out of your personal life, but also at work. And we'll talk about this a little further on in the presentation. Sometimes we turn to our phone because we don't really want to work on what we're working on. We don't really want to stick to it and finish that project. We just want to check Facebook and play one more game of Words with Friends. And the second you take out your phone takes you out of your life. Peter Bregman wrote a very interesting blog for the Harvard Business Review called How and Why to Stop Multitasking. And some of the research that he did was very fascinating to me. It showed that people distracted by incoming emails and phone calls saw a 10-point fall in their IQs. Now, what's the impact of that? The same as losing a night of sleep and twice the effect of smoking marijuana. That would have been an interesting study to take part in, wouldn't it? That's all I'll say on that topic as well. Doing several things at once is a trick we play on ourselves because we're really not multitasking. We're switch tasking. We're change tasking. You're not doing that many things at once. You're pulling yourself from one to another, to another, to another, and our productivity goes down by as much as 40% when we do that. Because we're not only taking interruptions from the outside, we're interrupting ourselves. And you might think you're different. You know, just like teenagers say, oh, that's not going to happen to me because their brains aren't done growing and they continually do stupid things. You might think you're different. I do it all the time. I'm good at it. Well, this is one case where practice does not make perfect because research shows that heavy multitaskers are less competent at what they do than light multitaskers are. So the more you do it, the worse it is because you're training your brain to never stay focused on one thing. You're training your brain to hop from one to another, to another, to another. And the more you do it, the more you reinforce those pathways in your brain, and the harder it is to really stay focused on one topic. My husband and I are both voracious and avid readers. The big difference is he reads to better himself, to self-help books, learning books, always. Give me a Nora Roberts novel, a Sandra Brown crime mystery, I'm a happy camper. But as husbands are known to do, he's always encouraging me, Connie, you should really read this one. This book is really good. And I roll my eyes, and every once in a while I read one just to keep him happy. So I'm thinking, A Mind for Numbers, How to Excel at Math and Science. Why would I want to read that book? I'm preparing for another certification exam, which I will probably be sitting for in the fall. And he said, really, read this book before you get in any further into your studying. It's really going to help you. So I read the book, and it was excellent. I recommend it for anyone. And it was very fortuitous because I was not only preparing to study for my exam, I was also doing my research for this presentation. And it's not just about how to excel at math and science. Dr. Oakley talks a lot in the book about focus and the importance of focus and ways to focus. So I have some information from the book. These are some of the techniques that Dr. Oakley talks about in her book that work. She talks about focused mode as opposed to diffuse mode. Now, focused mode is what we all need to do. You focus on a singular task, and that your brain is completely, all synapses are firing on that task, and we all need to get into that. There's also something called diffuse mode, and what diffuse mode is, and I'm sure this has happened to all of you, you're struggling with a problem, you have a deliverable due, you have a deadline project, and you've hit that wall. So you throw up your hands and you go for a walk, you go get a cup of coffee, and it comes to you. That's diffuse mode. That's when your brain has a chance to kind of take a deep breath and sit back and relax, and it finds the answers. So both of those are equally important, but neither of those account for all of the interruptions. And during my introduction, she referenced being in the zone or getting into the flow. A lot of women, or a lot of people in general, can get into the flow with a particular hobby. I have friends that scrapbook, that can get their scrapbooking stuff out and sit in a room all day, and they're totally in the flow. Cross stitch. My sister does something called pysanky, which is a Ukrainian egg art, very minute detail. I have no skills, so those things make me crazy. But if you're into those things, you can get into the flow. In your personal life, in your work life, you need to find that flow when you're working on your projects and when you're working on your deadlines. And one of the things that she really talks about in the book, and this is not a newsflash to anyone, interruptions are deadly. You cannot get into the flow with the interruptions. You cannot get your brain into that focused mode with constant barrages of all of these things that hit you. And silence is golden, and what silence is golden refers to here is you work better in a silent environment. Now, for those of you who work in cube farms or in noisy offices, that's very difficult. I'm fortunate, my office at Reclamere is back in the forensics lab where we do our data recovery work. I don't have any windows, only a very few people can get in, it's quiet. The days that I work in my home office, it's quiet. One of the gentlemen I worked with in the Northrop Grumman Orlando office would wear earplugs, noise-canceling headphones over top of those with the white noise turned on, and over his cube door he would hang a do not disturb, the only way he could work. I am guilty, however, of I like background noise. I like to have the TV or the radio. I always have the radio playing. And I would not feel comfortable presenting on a topic that I have not tried some of the techniques myself. So during the last couple months that I've been preparing this presentation, I have been implementing some of these techniques into my life. And it's not easy, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's not something that you can do cold turkey. But one of the things I have done is turn the radio off in my office. And it helps. As much as I don't think I'm hearing that back there, and as much as I say, I need that noise, it helps. So as much as you can within your environment, eliminate the external noise, try to do so. University of California neuroscientist Adam Gazzaley talked along this same topic, and the way he referred it to was resetting your brain. Dr. Oakley, in the Focus for Numbers book, the analogy that she used was a plant. If you have a plant, you got a beautiful plant for Mother's Day, you're going to take it outside and plant it. And the next day you decide you want it somewhere else, so you dig it up and you put it somewhere else. And then you realize, you know what, it's not getting enough sun there, so you rip it up and put it somewhere else, and what's going to happen to that plant? It's going to die. You're not allowing it to grow and root and flourish in one spot. Your brain is the same way. If you keep ripping your brain from one task to the next, it has to keep stopping. It can't get its roots down. And what this gentleman, this neuroscientist, referred it to as resetting your brain. When you're focusing on a task and you stop and answer an email, your brain resets. You go back to that task and you think you're picking up right where you left off, but you're not, because you have to reset your brain. The human brain was not designed to do that many things at once. So there's something called the Pomodoro method. Now, I had heard of this method before, and I'm laughing because I still find it amusing. I thought the Pomodoro method was some scientific name. Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. And for those of you of a certain age, either your mother or your grandmother had one of these timers in her kitchen. This is the timer that the gentleman that developed this method used, so basically it's the tomato method. That just made me laugh because I didn't realize that. His name was Francesco Cirillo, and he developed this time management in the 1980s. And his research showed that all adult brains, most adolescent, and even some children down to a certain age, have the ability to have a singular focus for a period of at least 25 minutes. So what you do with the Pomodoro method is you set a timer of some kind, and again, with all the electronic devices we have, finding a timer isn't too difficult. You set it for 25 minutes, and during that 25 minutes, you don't do anything. You You don't answer emails, texts, phones, people, nothing. When the timer goes off, you've achieved your 25 minutes. Now, the Mind for Numbers book that this came out of, she talks more about this in regards to studying, which a lot of you may be doing. As myself, I'm sure a lot of you have certifications you have to keep up, continual training, something that you have to remember for your boss, anything you have to regurgitate. They don't advise that you study for longer than 25 minutes without a 5 or 10 minute break, because that takes your brain from that diffuse mode, for that focused mode, into the diffuse mode, where then what you've learned can soak in. When you're working and you hit that 25 minute mark, if you're still in the flow and you're really staying focused, yes, the timer going off is going to be a slight interruption, but not as much as tearing your focus away. Hit that timer and keep going. Stay in that flow. Stay in that zone as long as you can until the interruptions just become to the point where you have to respond. Because once the timer starts, you're on the clock. No web surfing, no texting, no instant messages. Now, what some of the critics of this say is, that puts me under stress. I have to get stuff done in 25 minutes. You don't have to get things done in 25 minutes. You are seeing how much you can accomplish in that 25-minute period of time. And if that does cause you some mild stress, if you can work under a little bit of stress, then you're going to be better at handling big stress. And let's face it, in our jobs, we all have stress of some level. And the last one, and probably the hardest one, ignore distractions. Because we are all bombarded with distractions from all sides. So how, may you ask, can I ignore these distractions? Well, there's an app for that. And here's where that kind of anomaly that we talked about comes in. We're blaming technology for all of this, but yet here's where technology is going to be our solution. I'm an Android person, but I know that Apple has the same thing where you can set your, well, that's in Silence of Gold. Let me talk first about, I have an app on my phone called Quality Time. And I've had it for a number of years because I read a study one time that said how many hours the most average person spends on their cell phone. Oh, I don't spend that much time on my cell phone. So I installed Quality Time, and yes, I do. And what Quality Time does, and I'm sure there's a lot of other apps out there, but can only speak to the one that I use. It will tell you at the end of each day how much time you spent on your phone, and it breaks it down by app. You spent 2 hours and 20 minutes on Facebook. You played words with friends for 45 minutes. You texted for an hour. And you can exclude, and like I exclude calls. I don't include calls in my tally. Because if I'm talking on my phone, I'm either on a conference call for work, talking to my family, making an appointment. To me, that's not time wasting, that's a necessity. Now, you may feel differently and you want it, but you can include or exclude any app from your tally. And what it also does is you can set warnings. You've unlocked your phone 50 times today, you might want to back off. You've spent 2 hours on your phone already and it's only 10 o'clock in the morning, take a break. Now, it doesn't force you to, it doesn't keep you from doing it, but it pops up as a warning. And what Quality Time does more than control it is make you aware of it. And sometimes awareness is the first step. I'm here to say I was shocked the first few weeks I started to use it at the amount of time that I was actually spending on my phone. And I consciously make an effort to cut that back. Now, sometimes it's intentional. And I know those of you who are involved in yoga and some of these other, and I love that stuff. They talk about being intentional. If it's a rainy Saturday and my house is clean and I'm not really feeling like studying and I'm going to lay down on the couch and troll Facebook and cyberstalk people that I want to know what's going on in their life. See how fat people from high school got and play words with friends and all my games. That's intentional. Now it still tallies up, and at the end of the day I'm still sometimes shocked. But what we're talking about here is more just not realizing throughout your average work day and your evening at home with your families how much time that cell phone is sucking out of your life. And Silence is Golden here refers to a little bit different than what it did in the other slide where we talked about working in silence, and that is if you're going to set aside excuse me, a period of time where you don't want interruptions, silence your phone. My Android, and I'm sure Apple has it, has what's called a do not disturb feature. Turn it on. Turn your phone over so you can't see the light. Now, I can see some of you going, I can't do that. And it's not easy, and especially if you have an elderly parent or your child's at home with a babysitter, and you absolutely cannot tolerate the thought of them not being able to reach you for 25 or 30 minutes or for an hour, whatever time you block out. I'm sure there's an override feature. There's exceptions. I know in Do Not Disturb, my Do Not Disturb comes on at 9 o'clock every night and goes off at 6 in the morning. But during those hours, my immediate family can still get through. So if you absolutely feel that you cannot be unreachable for certain key people during that time, use that override. What I'd like to talk about is blocking your calendar. Now, this is another one of those depending on your work environment, depending on your role. If you're a manager, it's probably easier for you to say, don't bother me. If you're a worker bee and you have to explain that to your manager, there's going to be, it's a paradigm shift, and it's going to take some adjustment. But something in your calendar that indicates, unless the building is burning down or we're going bankrupt, it can wait an hour. So don't disturb me during that time frame. Peter Bregman, who wrote the Harvard Business Review blog on how and why not to multitask, did an experiment. And he did no multitasking at all for 30 days. And they say 30 days is what it takes to break a bad habit. Now, ideally, when you break a bad habit, you do so by replacing it with a good habit, not stop smoking and eat too much food, or stop doing drugs and start drinking. You don't want to replace one bad habit with another. You want to replace a bad habit with a good habit. So for 30 days, he did not multitask at all, and these were the results of his experiment. First off, he said it was delightful, and I like that word because that's not a word that you hear very often. He said it was delightful. He was present, and we then talk about being intentional and being present. He was present when he was with his wife and kids. And he said he didn't realize how significantly a short moment of checking his email disengaged him from the people and things that were right there in front of him. You might think that just reading that email and you go right back to what you were doing, but again, it comes back to that resetting of the brain. Especially if you have little kids, things happen so fast. I mean, they could change in front of your eyes. And you want to use the time that you're not at work to focus on the things that don't involve work. And when you are at work, you're going to be able to see the things that are in front of you and complete them and focus on them much better when you're not being interrupted. And that's where he goes to his second point. He made significant progress on challenging projects. And he states here something that I think is very true, the kind he usually tries to distract himself from. And that's where if you're working on something and it's not your favorite thing to do, that's where you will allow yourself to become distracted because I don't want to write this report. I'll just check Facebook real quick. Before I get into this report, I'm just going to finish this last game. And you allow yourself to become distracted because you don't want to finish that project. And he said he made significant progress on these projects because it required thought and persistence. He had that persistence. He gave it his full thought, and he made progress. He also said his stress levels dropped dramatically. Now, you would think it might be the other way around because when you're done with your blocked out time, you have all this stuff stacked up. But he said it was a relief to only do one thing at a time. And when he said that, I thought to myself, I almost can't imagine sometimes just sitting down and doing one thing at a time. Whether that's a work task, a work project, or just sitting out in the yard, having a conversation with my husband, just to do one thing at a time. He said his stress levels went down dramatically. He said he was liberated from the strain of keeping so many balls in the air at each time, at each moment. So I think that's very true. We all do that. We all have that juggling act, and when you eliminate the multitasking, you can finish one thing to completion before you move on to the next. And then he talks about patience. He lost patience for things that he didn't think were a good use of his time. He got bored much more quickly since he wasn't doing anything else. Now, I find I use my phone to relieve boredom, and that's fine, standing in line at the grocery store or stuck in traffic, as long as you move when the light turns green and people behind you don't have to beep because you're reading your phone. But he also felt that, he was using his phone as a relief for boredom at work. You're in a meeting, and we've all been in those meetings where someone's just droning on and on, so you just start checking your phone. And then they say, Connie, what do you think? I don't know, because I was checking my phone. So things that were not a good use for his time became a waste because he was more focused on things. And he also goes on to say he had tremendous patience for things that were useful and enjoyable. And one of the things was he listened to his wife. Wouldn't we all like that? Wouldn't we just love? Now, like I said, my husband, his cell phone is not what distracts him, but other things do. But just having full attention paid to the person that you're with, whether it's your colleagues at work, whether it's your family for dinner, he said he gained more patience. Nothing else was competing for his attention, whether that was a conversation with his wife or brainstorming a difficult problem. He said he had more patience for the things that he was then able to focus on. And he finishes up by saying there was no downside. No one freaked out because he didn't answer an email right away. No projects went unfinished. No deliverables were missed. Now, the caveat being, of course, this is one man, one experiment, one opinion. There could be a differing opinion. I was speaking with a friend of mine, and he said, I can't work without multitasking. I have ADHD. I have to do more than one thing at a time. So there's always the other side of the story. But the research that I did really backs up this experiment, as well as the other things we've talked about in the presentation, that no one can go to work and block out an 8-hour day and say, don't bother me. But you can do it in small and manageable chunks of time. Psychologist Larry Rosen shared his tips in Business Insider, and this is something we've talked about. Make it a gradual process. When you go to work tomorrow, set the first 15 minutes of your day and the first 15 minutes after lunch as your very first distraction-free time. During that 15 minutes, work on one thing. Don't check your emails, don't answer your phone, don't text, all of the things we've talked about. And start out with those 2 little 15-minute blocks of time. Start retraining your brain, because that's what this is. In essence, it is retraining your brain to function in the focused mode and not to always need those distractions, always crave those distractions. You also probably don't realize, because I didn't, how many times you at least look at your phone. Even if you don't unlock it and read it, you'll look at it, see if there's any notifications. You'll look for that light, you'll look. And then if there is something, you're going to want to read it. So that's where not even looking at your phone during these distraction-free times. Because, and the other thing, and we talked about this a little bit with the silence, the noises. Your email doesn't have to make a noise when it comes in. You have eyes. You're going to see it when you want to look at it. And one of the things that this psychologist talked about that I really liked was work based on your schedule, not based on external cues. And those external cues can be anything from the sounds that your cell phone makes, the sound that your email makes, someone coming up to you, someone coming to your door, walking into your cube, whatever. We all have calendars, we all have a schedule. Stick to that schedule. We stick to the schedule if we have a meeting. If you have a meeting scheduled from 9 to 10, or you have a conference call from 9 to 10, at 9 o'clock you're at that meeting. At 9 o'clock you're on that call. Have the same vigilance with the time that you set aside for your tasks. When I go out and do security assessments, I spend a couple days on site with the client, and then when I come back, there's all the reporting to do, because of course they want to know the results, and we want to present them in the best manner that they can benefit from the most. So I know when I come back, I'm going to have a couple days of report writing, but I'm also going to have a couple days of emails that I missed when I was at client site. and I'm also going to have the meetings that I have to attend. So we all have a calendar. Start scheduling specific time on your calendar and however it works for your environment. Rachel and I were talking about this at dinner last night, and she said maybe, because we have a fairly small company, she said maybe we could implement this company-wide, that from 9 to 11 is everybody's distraction-free time. From 9 to 11, you work on whatever your project is. And then from 11 to 1, we have lunch, we go bug each other, we answer all those emails. So if you work in a large corporation, that may not be as feasible, but it may be feasible in the group that you work in, or in the, just however you can work it. It's difficult to say anything across the board because everyone's environment is different, everyone's workload is different. But if you can just try to find what works for you. When I was writing down yesterday, I've been on the road a lot the last couple of weeks, but I rode down with one of my bosses yesterday because we were at a client site, and then Rachel met me here last night. He and I were talking about it, and he said he really likes the thought of it, and when I go back to the office, he wants me to share this presentation with our staff, and we're going to try to implement some of these things. So however it takes for you in your own office environment and your business environment, if you're the boss, great, you can make your staff do this. If you're a worker bee like myself, then you have to get management's buy-in. And that leads to the last one. Inform your colleagues, your managers, your family and friends, and get their buy-in. It's going to be a shift. It's going to be a change. But I find it hard to believe that any manager is going to say, no, you can't block out that time and finish that project. I might need you. Now, there may be those that are out there. I'm not discounting that. But for the most part, and the book that a lot of this information came from, my husband read it first. So now I'll be upstairs and he'll be downstairs, or I'll be in one room and he'll be the other. And he'll say, I'm setting my timer, and I don't bother him for 25 minutes. Or he does it and doesn't tell me, and then I interrupt him and then he yells. But, that's the importance of informing your colleagues, those who you work most closely with. Okay, I'm not going to answer emails immediately all the time. Now, another thing that Rachel suggested last night, and I thought it has merit as well, is, and it may sound a little slow, but maybe some kind of a code. Send a text, email 911, and that means there's an email come in that needs your immediate attention. And there are those things that happen that require you immediately, but they're far fewer than we think. Most things can wait 30 to 60 minutes. And if you're going to be amazed, again, because I've been working on these things. 1 hour, you can start with the 10 or 15, and the Pomodoro method, recommends the 25. If you can possibly block out 1 hour and work 1 hour of uninterrupted time, it will amaze you how much more productive you can be. And if you can continue to implement that. Because truthfully, this is what we all want. We don't want to be pulled in 1,000 different directions. We want to have time to relax and enjoy life. We want to work smarter, not harder. And I kind of laughed when I was doing these slides because I thought that woman laying in the tub probably has 3 kids knocking on her bathroom door trying to know when she's going to be done. And that woman laying on the couch reading the book, her husband's probably calling her outside for something. But maybe they found their zone. Maybe they're in the flow of relaxation because they work smarter, not harder. This is my information. My email address is very simple. It's Connie@Reclamere.com, and I would truly love to hear from you guys. I would love to hear your success stories. I would love to hear your tips and tricks. I would even love it if you emailed me and said you're out of your mind. It's just never going to work. And I also would really appreciate if you would fill out the evaluations. I'm blessed to be able to attend quite a number of conferences. It's required for my certification, and our CEO often travels with me. We are in the security world, and you really have to stay on top of things, so we network and stay on top of industry things. And a lot of the conferences I would attend, I would just kind of discard the evaluations. They're not important. When you're up here, knowing what you guys are really thinking is vastly important. So I would really appreciate it if you could fill out the evaluations. I've also recently started attending Toastmasters meetings, and they focus a lot on public speaking skills, and they do evaluations, and they always say, make sure there's something bad sandwiched in between the good. You don't have to do that here. This isn't Toastmasters, so all the good, no, really. Critique is you know, we need critique so that we can all become better at what we do. So that's all I have. Thank you very much, and good luck. I hope you have great success with it.